Hello everyone, good evening, and thank you so much for being here in this wonderful setting on this lovely summer evening. I'm Jennifer Rubin, I'm the Executive Chair of the Economic and Social Research Council, and it's just great to welcome you all here. Some have come from quite far afield, and some have just walked across the park, but you're all very welcome, and it's an exciting time to have you. That's because this is an important award for us to celebrate. With so much significance attached to impact these days, it seems, I think, worth remembering and reflecting for a moment on what this really is about. There are many great challenges in the world, from climate change to illness, from violence to neglect. Many of these are not intractable, which means if we study them carefully, if we understand them well, we may be able to help address them. And tonight, we'll hear about several projects that have been working to do exactly that. Studying carefully, understanding better, and helping to address the challenges that people, communities, and governments face. So we have a series of awards this evening, which we'll go into in a moment, but first it's my very great pleasure to introduce Sir Mark Walport, our CEO, as Head of UK Research and Innovation.
Thank you very much indeed, Jennifer, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And of course, this is the 6th year of ESRC's Celebrating Impact Prize, and it's an important opportunity to bring your community together to recognise and to reward the finalists. And I'm not going to give away the winners, if I knew, as it were. Now, impact is about providing the evidence and getting it to the policymaker. And one of the big challenges is actually communication. And I've spoken to about 6 or 7 of you in the last about 10 minutes. And you've each had about a minute to describe what you do. And you've done it brilliantly. Because actually an important part of getting impact is good, clear communications. And fundamentally, research isn't finished until it's communicated. But I'm very aware that achieving impact in the social sciences is a very particular skill. And I've had the privilege of, for the last almost 5 years before I took on UK Research and Innovation, being the Chief Scientific Advisor to the government. And the thing that I learnt was it's actually much easier to be a science advisor than it is to be a policymaker. And policymakers look through 3 lenses. They look through the lens of what do I know about X or Y, and that's the evidence lens. They look through the lens of, if I make a policy, is it deliverable? Because people are always coming up with great ideas for policies, but practically, many of them are completely non-implementable. And the third lens they look through is the lens of their values, their personal values, their political values, their social values, what they think the values of the electorate are. And the art of advising policymakers effectively is to recognise that the job of the advisor is to advise on the evidence. And it's then for the policymaker to decide how to do that. And where it goes wrong is when the person with sometimes more, sometimes less evidence becomes an advocate and tries to do the job of an elected politician. And what strikes me about the Impact Prize this evening is, and having read the really succinct descriptions of the projects and programs that are in the pamphlet, that the common denominator for all of these is that you've generated first-class evidence. And first-class evidence starts to speak for itself. And I think that is the great opportunity. It's what your community has to offer enormously. And I would say that when I was in the role of Chief Scientific Advisor, it was the social science that was often at least as important as the biological science, the engineering science, the physical science, whatever. And so I think you have an extremely important role. And I think that these prizes are a very good stimulus, not only to you as a community, but just showing others, I think, how this stuff works. And so, I really do congratulate all of you on generating really good evidence. And when I look at the examples, you really are generating impact. And I think ultimately, what is UK research and innovation all about? It is actually about, first of all, the creation of knowledge. Because we're constantly creating new knowledge. If we are going to be able to innovate, if we're going to have new impacts, then we need new knowledge. But it is then about turning that knowledge into utility. And that may be economic utility, it may be cultural and social utility through all sorts of other ways. And that, I think, is, in many cases, what these, the finalists have contributed to. So I'm delighted that you're having this event. I'm delighted it's been going for 6 years now. We can't claim any credit for it in UK research innovation because we're about 12 weeks old. In human terms, we're just about smiling at our parents. But nevertheless, we, I think, in a way, celebrate a great inheritance because we're incorporating, as it were, the 7 research councils, Innovate UK and Research England, part of the dual support system, working with its counterparts amongst other devolved administrations. But you're doing what we want researchers funded by the councils, the innovation agency in UK research innovation to do. So great work. Thank you very much indeed. And I'm afraid my job is now to go off and have impact of a different sort because I'm going to see a minister and I need to get there in 16 minutes. So I hope it's a great evening. And one last piece, I'm very interested in the policy evidence that the social sciences clearly generated about what time you start drinking wine. Thank you, Joshua.
Great. Thank you so much, Sir Mark. And yes, go have good impact for all of our sakes. And now it's time for our greatly anticipated awards. Just to say that over the last 6 years, we've had over 280 nominations and more than 70 finalists in this process from around the UK. So thank you to all those whose work is celebrated here this evening. Thank you to all the finalists. Thank you to the very hard-working panel. Much appreciated. You stayed the course through very careful and long deliberations about many fascinating projects. And a big thank you to the teams, both at the Royal Society for tonight's event and at the ESRC, who've done so much to make this evening possible. You really have pulled out all the stops. Thank you very much. Now, each prize will be presented by a guest speaker. And I'd like to begin by inviting Ziad Marar, President of Global Publishing at SAGE, and thank you for your co-sponsorship of tonight. And he will be presenting the Early Career Prize. Ziad.
Hello, it's great to look out in a room so filled with SAGE friends of various kinds. I see authors and editors and learner societies whose journals we publish, well populated, so I hope SAGE needs much introduction. I do want to say that we at SAGE, along with the ESRC, care very deeply about the impact of social science. We've tried in many ways to try and help that conversation along and to broker it in different ways, whether it's involvement with the Campaign for Social Science here or various equivalent bodies in the US. The way we're the different kinds of conversations we're having identify impact on different levels. So we heard a bit from Mark Walpott about the policymaker view, and of course policymakers are creating social science every day and would be well guided to hear what social science evidence might do to support them in that effort. But it's not just them. We're having conversations with people in the commercial sector, the big technology companies, the social media companies who are increasingly now crying out for a social science perspective to help some of them get out of some of the corners they might be in. We're also, just as publishers across HSS and STEM, noticing how many conversations are convergent between the natural sciences and the social sciences, and whether it's about uptake of vaccines or whether it's about tackling childhood obesity, it's really striking what social science impact there can be on these sort of general topics. And then finally, there's the public sphere. There's anyone who read the piece by Aditya Chakraborty in The Guardian this morning about how economics training can help create a more engaged and participative sort of democratic process, would have seen that. But there's myriad examples. So we're trying to have those conversations on many fronts, whether it's about measuring social science or whether it's about the nature of teaching social science. The impact runs all the way through. So in that context, to be able to provide, present the award for the Outstanding Early Career Impact is incredibly fitting, incredibly exciting for us at SAGE. And so with that, I would like to announce the 2 finalists, first of whom is Dr. Abigail Diamond from the University of Exeter. Recommendations from her research led to a national reporting system on police use of force for all police forces across England and Wales, improving transparency, accountability, and police practices. And then also Mr. Brett Heisman, London School of Economics. Mr. Heisman's insights into autistic people's perspective have challenged public perceptions of autism and developed tools to help people with autism and their family members understand each other better. So with that, we are going to start with the finalists, the runner-up. Let's make sure I've got the right gold envelope. I've heard that sometimes that doesn't go right for people. And the runner-up is Mr. Brett Heisman. Coming up. So, by a process of elimination, our winner is Abigail Diamond. Come on up. So, before Abigail comes up, we're going to do a quick video to hear about her work.
In 2016, a taser was fired by police in England and Wales nearly 1,800 times, roughly 5 times a day. But no data was made public on the circumstances of using taser. We knew even less about other forms of lethal force, such as police dogs, batons, or restraints. This data wasn't being systematically collected or published. My research shaped a new national reporting system on the use of force in England and Wales. My name is Abby Diamond, and my area of research is police use of less lethal force. This can receive less attention than use of firearms, but can have serious consequences for police officers, the public, and police legitimacy. However, we have known little about how often these techniques were used, how often they were used on certain population groups, or injuries to the public and officers. In 2014, the Home Secretary established a review into use of force reporting. I was appointed to the review's board, working with the National Police Chiefs Council, the College of Policing, and others. I also surveyed police forces and provided recommendations based on my findings. My research highlighted the need for a common reporting system. It also emphasised the need to record physical restraint, not just weapons, and the need to make the data available to the public. Many of my recommendations were taken up by the review and implemented in the new system introduced in 2017, directly affecting the practice of all police forces in England and Wales. They now have a standardised form to capture every use of force. They are expected to regularly publish and analyse this data and submit it to the Home Office on an annual basis. As a result, we now have detailed, standardised data that can be used not only by police forces themselves, but also by journalists, civil society groups, and oversight bodies.
We're very grateful for Abby's research. It provides us with a unique database from which to design our training and to select the most appropriate personal safety equipment. And just as importantly, it allows us to demonstrate to our communities that openness and that transparency and engagement.
But gathering data is only the first step. I'll be working with the College of Policing and other researchers to analyse the first year's worth of data gathered under the new system.
Having access to the data is really important because the college can set new national standards on officer safety. We can develop and test new approaches to officer training. So in the longer term, that will impact on officer safety and improve the safety of the public.
I'll also be using my links to the United Nations through engagement with UN torture prevention bodies to promote the need for reporting practices internationally. More data ultimately gives us a better understanding of how police force is used and thus contributes towards evidence-based policing, transparency and accountability.
Well done, guys. Thank you very much, Ziad, and congratulations to both of you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Professor Shamit Sagar, CBE, Chair for the Campaign for Social Science, and he will come to present on international impact. Thank you, Shamit.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, and it's a great privilege to be here, and indeed I'm delighted. One of the reasons why I'm delighted is that in my career, which now spans over 3 decades, I've sort of been personally pummeling away at the very basic principle that knowledge is important, but it's a means to an end. And that end, of course, is to provide public benefit. And I think, in a sense, that sort of has resonated and now chimes right across the academy, social scientists up and down the country, partly through ESRC's leadership, partly through the way in which we organise research excellence frameworks and so on. But it's really quite heartening for me personally to see the way in which that pendulum has swung. I will not take up too much time. Absolutely delighted to be presenting this. My notes asked me to perhaps use a minute or two to talk about what I thought was going to be, what I consider to be really good examples of the way in which research and evidence has been generated and has been used to inform policy discussions as well as decisions. And I sort of ran out of paper. I mean, there's too many examples, and I'm just going to sort of pick out 2 or 3 just to illustrate that. One is actually, I'm reminded by the fact that a few years ago, using the UK household longitudinal study, we established a policy unit, and a large part of that, working with Mike Daly in DWP, who's just sat literally behind me, was to make sure that Whitehall analysts could have kind of a real-time understanding of how households operated, particularly in relation to the changing circumstances of household finance. If you get a chance, Mike will talk to you a little bit about how that has not so much changed a policy decision per se, but it's really raised the capacity and capability of what is possible in Whitehall dealing with those sort of complex problems. Another really good example, just to share with you very briefly, is I've always been an admirer of the way in which, using my regulatory hat, the way in which the Financial Conduct Authority turned away from an immediate pressure to step in and do something about payday loans a couple of years ago. Very unpopular, because it's very popular to sort of say this is a dreadful thing, and was much more considered in thinking about what the evidence was telling us. And amongst other things, the evidence generated by our fellow social scientists was pointing out that if you simply go in and sort of ban all sorts of practices, much of that problem will be displaced, and a lot of this will go into kind of an underground lending market, and you've just stimulated an even bigger problem, having started with a moderate-sized problem. And I think these are really very good examples of research that is thoughtful, it's shrewd, it's obviously focused upon evidence and data, but actually it's got to some extent the needs of users in mind. You know, users like regulators and governments come under enormous pressure to sort of reach for a lever to sort of stop something happening, some sort of dangerous dog phenomena. And actually it's very important for the research community to be, as it were, measured on that and say, well, you know, we can pull that lever and here's some evidence, but actually it may not be the most useful, and in the longer term there may be wiser things, shrewder things to do in response to dealing with the changing household finances in a recession period, or indeed dealing with payday loans, in a sense, two ends of the same problem. I won't go on endlessly, but there are many examples where this can be done well. I just want to go back to this particular award. It's for Best International Impact. I can just first of all confirm in this particular category we have had a single finalist, and I'm going to turn to my envelope and share with you both the finalist and the name, so we can do it in one single go. And I'm very delighted, very honoured to be able to announce that the winner for International Outstanding Impact 2018 is Professor Kevin Bales of the University of Nottingham. Kevin will come up here in a moment and we'll have a look at the video, but the sort of short citation is about Kevin's work, research that reveals the true numbers of modern slavery, resulting in a new tool for estimating the real extent of modern slavery, and that which underpinned the 2015 UK anti-slavery legislation. One can go on endlessly and expand upon that citation, but very rarely do you see an example of outstanding impact that is perfectly aligned with a brand new statute. I mean, that is really quite an accomplishment, not so much in the research itself, but it speaks volumes about aligning the research and the evidence to one of those very rare policy windows when government develops the capacity, the confidence, and the certainty to bring about new laws. Can we have the video just describes the research?
In September 2017, a new global estimate of modern slavery was released at the UN General Assembly. 40 million people are enslaved today, and 89 million people have experienced slavery during the past 5 years. An overall estimate of the extent of this crime was finally recognized, which also used a new technique to uncover the true scale of modern slavery. For nearly 20 years, the modern global anti-slavery movement has been held back by two fundamental problems. The first is that there are more than 30 legal definitions of slavery in national and international laws, and none of them are in agreement. And the scientific operational definitions that are being used are equally muddled. The second problem is that we've been unable to estimate how widespread slavery crime is. Unlike other crimes that are measured as time-limited events in victim surveys, slavery is a crime of indeterminate duration. Slavery victims are cut off from identification for months, years, even decades. Our research tackled both of these problems. Throughout my career, I have focused on slavery and human trafficking in a global context and ways to counter these crimes. To address the first problem faced by the global anti-slavery movement, we examined the origins of definitions of slavery. We found that none of them had been shaped by people who had been in slavery. Most definitions focused on the mechanisms that fed into slavery, but ignored the state of control and isolation that slaves experience. Our answer to this was simple. Listen to survivors of slavery and open the door to survivor scholars whose experience could inform more powerful legal and operational definitions. Support from the ESRC enabled us to bring together a team of legal specialists with survivor scholars, bringing new insights into what slavery means and how it can be defined.
The most important benefit of Kevin's research is that it elevates the voices of survivors of slavery beyond our trauma story. It focuses on survivors as scholars, leaders, and activists. For my activism, I've recently launched the Survivor Alliance, an NGO that will unite and empower survivors of slavery around the world. We will ensure that survivor voices are included in the anti-slavery movement.
In tackling the second problem, I worked first with the Home Office scientists in the first application of multiple systems estimation, or MSE, to discover the number of slaves in the UK. Previously used for everything from fish stocks to mass atrocities, this technique generated the now familiar estimate of 10,000 to 13,000 slaves in the UK. The government's response to this was remarkable in terms of research impact. Even before the results were published, the Home Secretary announced that the new MSE-based estimates were to immediately replace previous estimates of the level of this crime, and that future planning and policy development should be based on the new figures. The estimate was also cited by the Prime Minister as a key driver for passing the Modern Slavery Act. After that, we carried out further testing and refinement of multiple systems estimation, and very importantly, disseminated the technique around the world through new media, international webinars, and even the production of an animated video to raise awareness. Now, several countries are using the multiple systems estimation technique to measure their own slavery crime, the first step to improve prevention and reduce the suffering and extreme human cost of modern slavery.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Bales.
Very proud of you. Take your chocolate.
Great. Thank you very much, and well done. It's now my very great pleasure to introduce the person who I think has travelled furthest here this evening, but was luckily in the country for various other reasons. The Honourable Julia Gillard is here to present the winner in public policy.
Thank you very much, Phil. For those of you who think it's a bit bizarre for a former Australian Prime Minister to turn up at these awards, let's say my true status here is really as a friend of Jennifer's and as an Australian who spends a fair bit of time in London. But I do want to make it clear that I am not open for conversations about the cricket. So if you wish to discuss your research afterwards, very happy to do that. But, you know, there's a borderline that we're not going to go over. It's my great pleasure to be here to announce the finalists and the winner of the Outstanding Impact in Public Policy Award. Obviously, I spent a fair bit of my past career being a consumer of evidence to help shape public policy. I know politicians get a little bit of a bad rap in the research community, and maybe from time to time that is earned because public policy is made on the run in response to political pressures and without much regard to the evidence. That does happen. But from the inside, I think people genuinely do want to make the best of public policy and do it informed by the best of research. And so you do a great service to governments and to political leaders in gathering that evidence and presenting it in a way that's digestible and usable by people who are inevitably under intense time pressure, and in public democracies today, in democracies all around the world, under intense political pressure because of the set of forces fragmenting our democratic body politic and making it more and more difficult to govern. So it's with a sense of, you know, great honour and privilege that I get to award this. I am frequently here in London because I can't say I've become a researcher. That would be talking myself up far too much. But I am at King's College as the inaugural chair of the Global Institute for Women's Leadership, trying to bring to bear evidence-based research on what prevents women coming through for leadership in all areas of life in greater numbers, in equal numbers, and what prevents their leadership from being fairly evaluated. But I assure you the high-quality research is being done by others. So firstly, to the finalists, let me read out the three finalists and then I will announce the runners-up. So our three finalists are Abigail Adams from the University of Oxford, John Dury from the University of Sussex, and Tony James from the University of East Anglia. And the runners-up in this category are Dr. John Dury and Dr. Toby James, if they would like to join me up here. Whilst they make the journey, John's research was in crowd psychology, and that's enabled enhanced crowd management practices for emergency specialists, improve public safety for festival goers, and change stadium safety procedures. And Toby's research was about government measures to encourage millions of eligible UK voters to join the electoral roll, and it helped boost voter registration in the run-up to the EU referendum. So congratulations to both of you. And here is the award. Thank you. Thank you. I think because you're incredibly clever people, you may well have deduced who the winner of this award is, but to just make sure we've got all of our gold envelopes right, in the one that says winner, this award goes to Dr. Abigail Adams of the University of Oxford, and we'll learn about her research now.
What is the value of justice? My name is Abby Adams. I'm an economist at the University of Oxford, and together with my colleague in the Oxford Law Faculty, Jeremiah Pressel, we investigate the economic incentives at play in the justice system.
In 2017, our research resulted in the whole system of UK employment tribunal fees being scrapped.
I want to understand how we can best design the courts so they run as efficiently as possible whilst maintaining access to justice.
The world of employment tribunals, it's an interesting one. There's a big change today.
In 2013, fees of up to £1,200 were introduced for bringing claims to the tribunal. The effect was dramatic. Within months, claims fell by over 70%. Although there were fee waivers in place for people with very low incomes, many people were concerned that the fees made it too difficult for workers to enforce their rights.
So that's a very dramatic fall in cases where individuals are bringing claims for the wages that they haven't been paid, the holiday pay that they haven't got, or complaints about unfair dismissal, discrimination, the sort of common or garden claims that Citizens Advice Bureau or a law centre or a solicitor's firm will see every day.
Against this backdrop, we set out to research whether adverse economic incentives could be thought of as a barrier to justice. In English law, Magna Carta has guaranteed access to justice for centuries. It's a great lofty principle, but there's one problem with it. How can we translate it into an actual hard empirical test?
To do this, we had to develop a new approach, combining economic theory and statistical analysis with constitutional legal principles. We drew on a range of data sources to show that because employment disputes generally involve small amounts of money, the fees often made it irrational for a worker to pursue a claim even if they had a good chance of winning. Our research became a central contribution to the court case brought by Unison against the fees, which was heard by the Supreme Court in 2017.
There's an economic theory that underpins this called the theory of rational choice, which is developed in a fascinating article in the Modern Law Review by Adams and Pressel, and they have teamed up to produce an article which addresses the lawfulness and the economic rationality of the fees order.
The Supreme Court was swayed by these arguments, declaring the fees as a violation of the fundamental right of access to justice.
This resulted in an immediate impact on tens of thousands of claimants who might otherwise have been deterred from bringing their case to the courts.
Now the fees have gone. The most immediate impact has been that the number of cases has increased again, but a much wider group benefit from the halo effect of employers knowing that that's an option and that encouraging them to play by the rules in the first place.
We're now beginning to work on the design of online courts. How can we design a digital justice system that protects access to justice? A question best answered by lawyers and economists working together.
Congratulations, Abigail.
Well done, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Julia. And it's now my great pleasure to introduce Des Holmes to provide the next award, Director of the Research in Practice. And she will be presenting Impact in Society. Thank you, Des.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. Many years ago, when scrunchies were in fashion the first time around, and only some of you know when that was, I used to work with young offenders, or young people who happen to offend, if we're going to get ethical about it. And at that point, I was considering leaving practice to go into academia. And a manager of mine said, "Nah, you don't want to do that. You want to stay here and make a difference." So I spent pretty much the rest of my career trying to narrow that gap and trying to make it less of a binary choice, because I think it's deeply unhelpful to society, to researchers, and to the people we're trying to serve if we operate in a sense of two different planets. Too often I would say that the potential impact of research is mediated, by which I mean thwarted, to be honest, by a variety of factors. Notably, and whilst taking into account the wise words we've had from Sir Mark and from Julia so far, I would say they're notably thwarted by non-evidence-based policy. So from, grammar schools to drugs policy, there's a whole range of examples where we're not seeing the hard work, the tenacity, the passion and the talents of researchers being lived out in legislation, in policy or in professional practice. There are notable exceptions, and in my sector, which is children's services, children's social care, I'd like to particularly commend the work of people like Paul Bywaters, who unequivocally and for the first time has managed to show the link between child poverty and children requiring protection and being placed in care. And that starts to chip away at the ideology that surrounded our policy sphere. Where research does manage to cut through those barriers, it makes a huge difference, and it's so important that we do celebrate it at nights like tonight. For me, research that achieves that impact in society, that's where research meets activism, I would suggest, and we should be absolutely unashamed of being in that Venn diagram. This kind of research, far from being an ivory tower, acts more like a lighthouse, illuminating the dark spots that we either choose not to see or are inveigled into not seeing. I think it's critically important that we do reject the idea of ivory tower research and embrace the idea of lighthouse research, keeping us safe, watching for rocks. There is, in my view, personally, much to be angry about in society right now. And I don't know about you colleagues, but I spend a lot of my time ranting. So I'm very, very grateful when any time someone allows me to rant with references, which is surely the point of this award. So it's a huge privilege to be here tonight, and I'll just read out the names of the finalists. And I'm so anxious I'm going to have a Moonlight Oscar ceremony moment, so my voice is starting to shake here. Our finalists for this award are Professor Penny Green from Queen Mary University of London, and research by Professor Green raised worldwide awareness of the persecution of Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar Rakhine State and highlighted possible stages in a process of genocide. Our other finalist is Professor Emma Reynold of Cardiff University, and Professor Reynold's research involving children and young people on their experience of gender and sexual violence has changed Welsh legislation and sparked youth activism on sexual injustice and violence, and is reshaping relationships and sex education within schools. So, If I now open my finalists, and I'm double checking my finalist envelope. A warm hand of congratulations, please. Professor Penny Green, Queen Mary University of London. So, as you will have deduced, of course, our winner tonight for Outstanding Impact in Society is Emma Reynold of Cardiff University. Go on, the Welsh. And I believe we're about to see a film of Emma's work around work with young people any minute now.
Relationship abuse, sexual harassment and gender inequalities have a massive impact on young lives and the lives of others. For just over 20 years, I've been researching how gender and sexuality shapes children and young people's lives, in schools, online and in public spaces. My name is Emma Reynold and I'm Professor of Childhood Studies at Cardiff University. Over the last decade, I've organised events that bring together young people, academics, practitioners, policymakers and NGOs, all focusing on sexism and sexual violence. Each event has used participatory methods to create new ways of listening and acting on children and young people's own concerns. This work has culminated in an interactive toolkit created with young people to help them raise awareness of gender-based and sexual violence in their schools and communities. The aim was to address difficult issues like violence against girls and women, transphobia and homophobia through gender equality, social justice and children's rights in ways that engaged them and at their own pace. With ESRC funding, I got support from Welsh Government, the Children's Commissioner for Wales, the NSPCC Cymru and Welsh Women's Aid to bring together a young people's steering group and a range of practitioners to create the Agenda Toolkit. All too often, issues around gender and sexual violence are framed in ways that shame and blame people. Agenda counters this approach by offering an affirmative, inclusive and rights-based approach to engage with a range of issues, from feminism to slut-shaming.
Emma's work is creating the change that has badly been needed so that our future generations build better, positive, kind relationships where people listen to each other and can be change makers for the world.
It really allows the pupils to speak, to interact, and especially with pupils who are normally very, very shut down to education and very, very shut down to the traditional format of a lesson. Agenda allows them to explore things in a different way.
In workshops, we talked about themes like street harassment or unwanted touching. In an activity called What Jars You, young people write down issues that jar them about gender and sexual discrimination. Stop-start plates have been used to create a line of action on what needs to be changed. Skirts made from graffitied rulers have been worn in youth conferences to speak out about sexually abusive banter. Since Agenda's launch in November 2016, we have embedded it into practice through outreach work in schools and youth groups, and practitioner workshops at local, national and international levels. In the first year, Agenda has reached more than 3,000 young people and practitioners, and we've trained more than 40 Agenda youth ambassadors.
But what's important to me about Emma's work is that it draws on children's experiences. She works with children to develop her research and any materials coming out of it. She was selected by Welsh Government to lead an expert panel on sex and relationships education. They came out with a really quite transformative and far-reaching and quite radical set of suggestions last autumn. And our Cabinet Secretary for Education announced that she would be implementing the recommendations in full on a statutory basis in Wales.
and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the expert panel members and its chair, Professor Emma Reynold, for their excellent work.
Agenda and its impact on society is the result of extensive long-term partnerships with schools, youth groups, third sector agencies, activists, artists and Welsh Government.
We are making changes.
We're exploring the development of a UK-wide version and strengthening Agenda's international reach. It's making a real difference to how young people together are learning about, communicating and challenging sexism and sexual violence.
Well done. Thank you very much, Des, and well done to us. Excellent. I'd now like to introduce Madeleine Bowers, CEO of the British Academy of Management, to present our winner for Business and Enterprise. Thank you.
Careful not to drop it. There we go. Right. Hello, and again, like everybody else, really thrilled to be here. It's such a lovely evening. I guess it goes without saying, business lies at the heart of most societies and certainly all advanced economies. And management is something pretty much everyone experiences directly or indirectly, positively and negatively. I dare say most of us here at some point in our careers have experienced a manager who was problematic, whose influence on the business or organisation was perhaps less than positive. I hope we've all experienced the benefits that come from competent and even good managers too. And most of us will also have experienced the results of good or bad management practices indirectly. That is, in the behaviour and attitudes of others who we interact with in daily life. Management is all around us. We know that the UK is 18% below the OECD average for productivity. And recent research has shown that the #1 cause of this deficit is management and leadership. The evidence for the importance of business and management research is there in black and white, in impact case studies submitted to the last REF exercise, as well as in practical improvements on the ground. From improving corporate governance, to finding the evidence that diversity really does deliver for companies, from demonstrating that well-being and working well are not just fluffy loveliness, but do benefit the bottom line, from helping large multinationals understand the impact of human rights issues on their supply chains, as we heard earlier, to discovering how to ensure our small and medium-sized enterprises, who represent 2/3 of the UK's turnover and employment, by the way, to ensure they survive and thrive. I'm just going to take one small example. Lancaster University Management School have run a leadership and management development programme for SME owner-managers. Through that, they have supported more than 3,000 SME owners, creating over 10,000 jobs. An independent evaluation showed that the participants reported significant increases in growth rates of both turnover and employment. That programme, which has been successfully rolled out by other universities, improving turnover, confidence, strategic outlook, and regional prosperity, takes academic insight and expertise and makes it available to businesses in ways they are able to access. I'll just quote one participant. Joe Hall of Hall's Food Group, a long-established family firm, said the programme had been critical to their survival as well as their success. Business and management research, working on both the large and the small scale, is really important. It is central, it is vital for addressing the grand challenges that the UK faces in the decades ahead. So, it's with great pleasure that I turn to the outcome of this competition. So this year, we have just one finalist in this category. So I'm going to open the wonderful gold envelope and read out the winner's name. And the winner of the Outstanding Impact in Business and Enterprise Award 2018 is Dr. Denise Baden of the University of Southampton. So I think we're just going to watch a little film about the very interesting work she's done with small businesses.
The hair and beauty industry represents a significant part of the UK economy, from approximately 55,000 salons across the country. Making the industry more environmentally friendly and less resource intensive has potentially huge benefits. Since 2012, we have been working with salons, training colleges and industry bodies to embed sustainability across the industry. My name is Denise Baden. I'm an Associate Professor in Sustainable Business at the University of Southampton. I'm especially interested in motivators for sustainable practice, and it became apparent that despite increasing awareness of sustainability issues, behaviours have been slow to change. Hair care uses a great deal of hot water. The difference between high and low hair care routines is enormous. We're not talking about a 10 or 20% difference in carbon footprint, but 2,000%. Hairdressers can be massively influential, not just through the practices they model in the salons, but the messages they give to their clients. And clients are convinced too, not just by the environmental aspects, but by the fact that too much heat, water and chemicals are not good for the skin or hair.
People listen to other people like them. They don't tend to listen to politicians, they don't tend to listen to what's going on in the media. Sitting here having your hair done and your hairdresser's chatting to you about ordinary life and you believe them. So when they start using less water or they start using less energy and they tell you about it, it's a very persuasive way of spreading the environmental message.
We worked with salon owners to find out how to make their practices more sustainable.
Yeah, have you seen that film?
For example, using dry shampoo or leave-in conditioner saves money, water, electricity and time.
This is our water extraction system. It draws water out of the hair after shampooing and conditioning is complete, so it cuts out the use of towels. So to eliminate even just the water in the washing machine, the savings in salon and on the environment would be phenomenal.
Our findings led to a change in default recommendations from shampooing twice to just once, which by itself has saved millions of litres of water and kilowatts of energy. Working with industry bodies, we've created a bespoke sustainability certification for salons and stylists, so far issued to over 1,000 stylists and 50 salons. A major challenge was getting hairdressers to come to our events, so we obtained an ESRC Knowledge Exchange grant to embed sustainability across the whole curriculum.
Since 2014, all qualifications that have been written have now got sustainable practice built into them. So the knock-on effect that we get is a learner becomes a stylist, the stylist becomes the senior stylist, becomes the salon owner, and this is a self-perpetuating cycle within industry.
We reach several thousand trainees and trainers via industry events and numerous workshops at hairdressing colleges. Our recent ESRC Impact Acceleration Grant has enabled us to develop a virtual salon training tool that demonstrates key sustainability concepts, sustainable practices, products and technologies. A typical salon that followed our suggestions would save over £5,000 a year, 24,000 kilowatts of energy and 286,000 litres of water.
We're a huge industry. We use a lot of resources. If we just all take a few small little steps, we'll make a big difference.
We are well on our way to achieving our aim of embedding a sustainable culture across the hair and beauty sector. Our hope is to expand the project internationally, to embed sustainable hair practice in countries that suffer water shortages more regularly, countries such as Australia, South Africa and the USA.
Denise Baden. I shall be talking to my hairdresser.
And congratulations to you too. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce Professor Jane Falkingham, OBE, Dean of the School of Human and Mathematical Sciences and an ESRC Council member. Welcome, Jane. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jen. I should say I'm the Dean of the Faculty of Social, Human and Mathematical Sciences at the University of Southampton. So congratulations, Denise. I have to be a bit careful. I think I'm her line manager's manager. So just picking up on Madeline's points there. I'm really thrilled to be here today as a member of the panel. So the panel was actually locked up together for 2 whole days, discussing and debating this year's awards, and you can already have seen this evening the hard choices we had to make, because we had a truly outstanding set of nominations this year, and it was a really difficult choice for us. But I thoroughly enjoyed the 2 days, and if Jen ever asks you to do it going forward, do say yes, but make sure your diary is cleared. So the panel had a really difficult choice, but I think the nominee for tonight, or the choice rather for tonight, really speaks to the success of the ESRC itself in investing in its doctoral training centres. As Sir Mark said, making impact needs skills, and I think ESRC over the last 5 to 6 years has really started taking seriously equipping the next generation of social scientists with the skills that they need to be able to generate the first-class evidence, but then communicate that evidence and research and make impact. And so I'm just going to move immediately on, really, to our winner, who's already been on the platform once today, but we just had such a hair's breadth in the early career researchers category that we actually wanted to honour both of them this evening. So please can we welcome back to the stage Mr. Brett Heisman from the London School of Economics for his work on challenging autism. See your film first. Okay, we're... Thank you, and well done, Brett. Excellent. Oops, sorry. Great. And now it's over to me, I believe, to present the very last award of this evening. And this award is for the Impact Champion. So we only have one, and I'm going to open this special gold envelope. I do think we need a drum roll next year. Is that possible? Any chance? And the award for the Impact Champion from ESRC, and this is a very important one to us, of course, because you spread the word and you bring other people on board and you help make sure that we do this for years to come.
and I think this is very well deserved for all those reasons, is Professor Matthew Flinders. And what I wanted to say about this is that over the past decade or so, Matt Flinders has promoted and built impact capacity really across the social sciences. He's Sir Bernard Crick Center for the Public Understanding of Politics at University of Sheffield, but much more widely through his creation of new approaches, institutions, training initiatives, courses, and opportunities for engagement. He's inspired social scientists around the country. He's a long-standing proponent of helping early career researchers consider the impact of their work, and his impact-based teaching led him to design the very first ever module to be formally accredited and co-taught by the Houses of Parliament. He launched something called the Total Exposure Initiative, bringing international broadcasters and political scientists together to create TV and radio programs that show why the study of politics really matters. Now, I won't go on at much more length because I think we do have a video of Matt's work that's about to show, and then I'll ask him to come up. Is that right? Yes.
This is an academic who loves what he does, increasing the knowledge of political science as a discipline and greater awareness of the sorts of choices that politicians themselves have to make. And he is fizzing with ideas.
The role of governments is rarely to govern, it is to survive. The role of opposition isn't to question, it is to attack. Is it any wonder we all turn away in increasing numbers? There's a role for social sciences in informing, in educating, in criticising, in prodding and probing and energising the broader public. And at a time of mass disaffection and anti-politics, there's been no more important time for a vibrant social science community.
The Crick Center was named after Professor Sir Bernard Crick, set up by Professor Matt Flinders at the University of Sheffield, designed specifically to pick up the original ideas of Bernard Crick, which was that you applied good academic practice and research to the real issues that were affecting people's lives in the real world. And that is about taking risks. It's about setting up the citizens' juries between Sheffield and Southampton. It's about the work with the Select Committee and the parliamentary input that the Crick Centre, led by Matt, has actually been innovating and has really set a new pattern of trying to ensure that what we're doing in terms of teaching, in terms of research, actually has some impact on the world outside.
I like building teams of academics with teams of practitioners in ways that build bridges and links that wouldn't otherwise take place. Working with the ESRC, working with the Parliamentary Office of Science and Technology, we have a whole raft of fellowships now that allow particularly early career researchers to have secondments and placements within the Palace of Westminster.
Right, we'll go straight to the questions, and could I start by asking you to provide the committee with a brief statement of your views on the current state of democratic engagement in the UK.
Matt has been a special advisor to the Select Committee on Citizenship and Civic Engagement, of which I was a member in the House of Lords. He played a very important role in encouraging early career researchers, younger researchers and so forth, who probably would never have thought of giving evidence to a Select Committee like this. And that enriched our committee, but I think it was very important for those academics as well.
But we need to give young people the understanding of how the system works, how to engage with it, and how a democracy works.
One of the things we did with Matt at the Crick Center was create free graphic animation cartoons to try and get his and colleagues' research out into the public light. We ended up getting incredible engagement from it. I can't remember the exact figures, but it was over 500,000 in youth engagement around specifically his research and the research of other academics.
He's acted as an advisor to the House on the Restoration and Renewal project. Matthew has written a book called In Defence of Politicians, and I think there's, if I remember rightly, almost a subheading, In Spite of Themselves. I've heard his radio series.
Here's the first in a three-part series presented as a personal viewpoint by Matthew Flinders.
What's the first word that pops into your head when you think about politicians?
Corrupt.
The rubbish.
Not one I could repeat on the radio.
So I've just finished my undergraduate degree with Matt Flinders at the University of Sheffield. In a normal course, you just submit essays, but in Matt Flinders' course in Parliamentary Studies, we were able to really engage with policy by submitting evidence to select committees. Mine was published and then my name was referenced within the report. I think 22 out of 40 within the classroom had their submission of evidence published, and I don't think that I would have been able to do that without the support I got from Matt.
I think one of the challenges is to make sure that we broaden out understandings of impact so that anybody, irrespective of their discipline or their specialism, can understand how they can be located. There's a whole raft of opportunities, and we need a broader range of academics who can situate themselves, frame their research, tell their stories in a vibrant, audacious, really ambitious manner.
Thank you, and I'm not sure you could actually hear, it wasn't very audible, that bit where the person then said, present company accepted, of course. But anyway, sorry. So, well done, everyone. Thank you all for the excellent and really varied work that we've heard about this evening. From building new data sets that can help increase transparency and build trust and confidence in the police, to showing how we can use many different sources to obtain better estimates of human trafficking. From looking at the contribution of some of our everyday services to our carbon footprint and how we might change that, to shedding light on the impact of changes in court fees on people's behaviour. To me, these projects highlight the important contribution that social science can make to better understanding the world around us, bringing to light new perspectives, providing insights into how people make sense of, respond to, and interact with other people, with policies and with practices around them. And importantly, I think, what's been so exemplary is the way they've done so in all these projects, with curiosity, with rigor, and with an openness of mind. A wonderful leader I know began his career in research as a young assistant, a research assistant, many, many years ago. And he tells the story of starting out with his first research supervisor who said to him, if you're going to be an excellent researcher, then you must prepare to be surprised. What she meant by that, was that although we're likely to go into a project or a study with hypotheses and expectations, we should always be willing to let the data or the people we're speaking with or whatever we're observing lead us to very different and often surprising conclusions. And I think these projects have all brought something new and approached their subjects with rigor, and in doing so have helped us understand something better. So thank you for that. It's been a pleasure to hear about them and to learn from you all. And that kind of impact, to me, is one of the great contributions that our world-leading universities and research organizations can make. So thank you again. Thank you to SAGE for co-sponsoring this evening. And thank you all for coming to share the stories of these projects with us tonight. So it only remains for me to ask you to please all join us now. I see that the wine and nibbles have already started flowing, but please all join us for a reception to follow in celebration of this wonderful work.
I think we should just ask the winners.